Hello, everyone. Welcome to What Turns You On. Today's Monday, November 3rd, 2025, and we're going to talk about the heart of the matter. I'm Dr. Alex Katehakis, and I am happy to welcome you to this webinar as usual. So, the heart of the matter is really talking about where your heart fits in to sex and sexuality. So we're going to be talking about that and the four cornerstones of intimacy. So as always, a few things before we start. I want to remind you to type your questions into the Q&A box, not into the chat box, but into the Q&A box, and I'll answer them as we go along. And also to be sure to leave us your feedback or reviews or comments on Amazon for What Turns You On. Let us know what you love about the workbook, how you're using it, ways that perhaps it's helped you, or how you've gifted it to others. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button below. And that way you'll never miss a post. And again, you can always keep up with me on all of our social platforms on Instagram at Alex Katehakis or at Center for Healthy Sex. And finally, if you want to sign up for our mailing list, you can click the link in the chat box. So that way you can keep up with our upcoming events and webinars and services and anything else we have going on here. So this webinar series has been exploring the aspects of my workbook, What Turns You On, a guide to living your best sex life. And it's designed to help you get honest with yourself about how you define sex so you can enjoy the kind of touch and sexual activities you really enjoy as opposed to what you think you should be doing. And that way you can also have explicit and hopefully meaningful exchanges with a sexual partner. So the idea being that the more comfortable you are with your own clarity about what you do and don't like sexually, what you do and don't want, helps you start to reduce shame about those things. And then it allows you to more comfortably talk about them with other people. So one of the sections in the workbook talks about or asks the questions, what are your personal values? And how do your personal values match up with your turn-ons for the list at the end of chapter 3? So you'll find these lists in What Turns You On. You will find them in, I believe, Sexual Reflections. You'll also find them in Erotic Intelligence. And so these are lists that I combine, but feel free to add to those lists as you work with them. But the idea is making a list of all the things you value in a relationship. What is important to you? What are your non-negotiables? And then looking at all the things that turn you on. What are the things that are really essential for you to be sexually aroused, for you to feel safe and open and available to connect with someone else? And then to compare those two lists to see if they align. Like, are you in your integrity? Do you support your values with what you're doing sexually? And it's asking you in chapter 3 to notice a common theme. And how well do these things match up? And does anything stand out for you in particular? And if so, is it problematic? Is it exciting? Do you find that you are congruent? Do you wish you were more congruent? So those are things for you to talk about with a sexual partner. And that's actually a fun exercise to do with your sexual partner, to see where the two of you converge and diverge and how you build bridges for, places where there might be a difference between the two of you. And then the four cornerstones of intimacy also help with that bridge. So if you let those four cornerstones be your guide when interacting with your lover, then you will have a common way or a common language. Now, these four cornerstones first appeared in Erotic Intelligence in 2011, and then they came back in 2023 in a slightly different iteration. But the first one is self-knowledge. So self-knowledge means that you take a stand for what's true for you. So first of all, you have to know what's true for you, and then you abide by what's true for you. You know what you like and what you dislike sexually. what scares you, and where you're willing to take risks. So, in other words, you know who you are, as well as we can know who we are on any given day, because these things can shift and change, as I've talked about, from day to day, week to week, year to year. So, the question is, who am I today sexually? What do I like today? What do I want? What do I need? And if you've been following this webinar and if you follow the workbook, that is the trajectory of the workbook. That is what's meant to happen, is that you set a course and you deconstruct all of these things that have come together to give you an idea about who you are sexually, and that you've updated that sexual script for yourself. So when you know who you are, then you're willing to take risks, and you also know where your boundary is, where you won't take a risk, or you won't, or where you do draw a line. Then the second cornerstone is comfort and connection. And comfort and connection have you confronting your anxieties while staying connected to your partner, regardless of what they're communicating to you. So even though you're anxious or you're nervous, you still stay connected. You don't sort of emotionally leave the relationship or shut down or shame your partner, that you're able to hold on to yourself and soothe your anxieties, whatever they're saying to you or whatever the situation might be. And that ability to soothe yourself and not get defensive or spiral into shame is an important practice for having a stable sense of self. And a stable relationship can form out of that capacity. It's what, in therapeutic terms, we call differentiation. But being able to regulate yourself in the face of nerves, if you will, being able to breathe, being able to think, being able to stay present, being able to stay connected, even though you're nervous. And one of the best ways to do that is to let your partner know that you're nervous right now or you're a little scared. That actually brings you into the present moment, and you're not acting like you're something else, like you're not trying to act cool or like you've got this when really you're not sure. So be honest about what's going on with you. The third cornerstone is responsibility with discernment. So, what does that mean? It means that you're accountable for your own feelings. You're taking responsibility for how you feel, and you're assertive and direct, and you speak up for what you want and need without being mean or hurtful. So this doesn't give you license just to tell it like it is, and you don't care about the other feelings or what their reaction's going to be about it. You do it in a way that is direct and truthful for you, but you're not out to hurt your partner or to make them feel less than because you're really into something and they're not into it, so they must be defective or faulty. That's not where you want to go. You want to listen also to your partner's response rather than reacting to it. So if somebody tells you they're interested in having a particular sexual experience and you think that's unusual or it makes you a little bit uncomfortable, it's important to listen to really understand what they're saying rather than formulating your response or getting defensive or thinking that they're criticizing you somehow because you don't want to do that. So try not to make it all about you. Try to, again, regulate your emotions, breathe, listen so that you can understand the other person. When you're talking, make sure you're being clear and kind so that you can be understood. And that way you would be in a healthy communication process. And then the last cornerstone of the last cornerstone is empathy with emotion. So, is your ability to recognize or feel your partner's thoughts and moods and understand and validate those feelings while not making them about you available to you? So, having empathy and having emotion, um, that's being able to do both. I can feel your feelings and I can also feel my own feelings. And I'm recognizing your feelings and what you're thinking and your mood. And I understand and validate where you're coming from, but I'm not making it about me. So if you don't like something or you don't want me to do something and you tell me, I've got to be able to hear that and understand it and validate it without going into a place of saying, oh, well, I'm not a good lover, or I don't ever get that right for you, or I can never get it right. Then I start to make it about myself. If I start thinking that, again, it's all about me, as opposed to hearing that you need something different from me, and can I deliver that to you with kindness, with compassion, with empathy? So, if you can spend some time with the following questions, that's a way for you to start to excavate this. So, of the four cornerstones of intimacy, which one will you struggle with the most? Ask yourself that. What work do you need to do in order to be able to hold on to yourself in the presence of another, which you may or may not agree with? What kind of regulation work on your nervous system do you need to do? What tools or practices might help you, like staying present or breathing or really listening and noticing that you're getting defensive, but trying to breathe through that defensiveness and remember that you're just listening to try to understand what the person's saying. It's not an indictment on your character or that you're a bad lover or you're not adventurous or you don't ever get anything right. See if you can stay out of that kind of toxic mindset and really be there as a good friend to your partner, to your lover. So, this is challenging when you may not agree with the person, or if they're upset with you, but that's where the rubber meets the road. Can you do it under duress? And can you comfort yourself while staying connected to your partner, even though they might be upset? And just to say, wow, they're really hurting. They're really struggling right now. They're upset now, but I'm not going to make this about me. And how do you do that? Again, what are the tools and techniques or practices you need to be able to do that? And by taking deep breaths and remembering what you love about that person, that may be something or something else. And this is why I think it's important to write about these things because there's a lot packed into what I'm saying. And that's why I'm asking you, which of these four cornerstones is going to be the most challenging for you? Where do you need to do some additional work on yourself so you can be a good listener, a good partner? And you have to, first, you have to have self-love before you can love anybody else. And that in and of itself is a big piece of work for all of us. And once you have self-love, then can you really listen without being judgmental or getting defensive or making it about yourself? That's the next chunk to chip away at. And then what are the practices you need to put into place every single day so you can do that? And sex cascades out of those two things. That's what, quote, makes people a good lover. It's not about watching more pornographic material or learning more sexual positions. It's really about showing up in your fullness, in your full-heartedness, your full-bodiedness as a good, loving, trusting other that allows the erotic to unfold. And then do you speak up for yourself even if it's uncomfortable? That is part of this practice also. And then listening without getting reactionary, not just defensive, but not reacting inappropriately. And then making sure that you're hearing the paradoxes in these, that just because you're listening to someone because you want to understand them and you're not getting defensive or reactionary, does that not mean that you don't have the right to speak up for yourself or later to defend your position, but you want it to be a turn-taking situation where when you're listening to understand the person, and when you're talking, you're speaking to be understood. These were Pia Melody's basic tenets, what she called talking and listening boundaries. And when you're doing that, there's a purity of communication rather than formulating your defense while the other person's talking, in which case you will devolve into an argument. It won't go well. So these are some of the practices you want to put into place. And believe it or not, these make you a better partner, a better sexual lover. So can you empathize with how your partner feels? Can you really feel what they're struggling with? And can you understand and validate how those feelings affect them? So empathy, validation. Can you do this without making their feelings about you? So not devolving into shame that's toxic, and making it self-centered. So it's all about you now, in which case you've just abandoned them and you're not listening to them and you're not really there for them anymore because now it's all about you. So these are some practices and tips for rounding off this notion of what turns you on and how you communicate it to a partner. We have a question here that says, I'm 3.5 years sober from sex addiction and still not regularly sexually active with my wife of 20 years. I'm careful to rationalize in my mind how healthy masturbation could be integrated, but I'm consistently avoiding the topic to avoid hurting my wife, empathizing with what her experience must be like, such a betrayal and causing distrust. I then go back to suppressing some of my sexuality. In addition, I suffer from premature ejaculation. I've been told to slow down sex, but have no idea what slow means. Any advice? Well, it sounds to me like the two of you should be in couples therapy at this point because you're trying to work this out by yourself. This idea that I'm consistently avoiding the topic to avoid hurting my wife is a problem because you are going to hurt her. You're going to have to, and she's going to hurt you, and she's going to have to deal with her discomfort about being sexual again. And both of you are going to have to get honest about whether you even want to have sex again, and if so, why, and if not, why not, and what does that mean for the future of your marriage? So it seems to me that you're not just protecting her. I think you rationalize that you're protecting her, but you're really protecting yourself because you don't want to put yourself out there and deal with both the residual consequences of your behavior, but also getting honest about who you are sexually and what you want, and finding out who she is sexually and what she wants. So you may want to start with going through my workbook, Sexual Reflections, which is designed specifically for sex addicts in recovery, and looking at their sexual wants and needs and desires, and then taking that information to your couples therapy so you can start to work through the question of, do we even want a sex life together again? And if so, what's it going to look like? And where do we begin? And what does that look like? And my guess is you're probably going to need some assistance from a professional along the way. So that would be my best thinking about that. I just want to add, that I think it's important to be living a pleasurable life at this juncture, that you invite pleasure into your life in every imaginable way. And I'm not talking about genital stimulation. I'm talking about spending times with friends and family and laughing. I'm talking about, cooking and enjoying a delicious meal. I'm talking about the pleasure that comes from a great workout or getting a massage or doing anything that brings you joy, taking a walk on the beach, or watching a baseball game with friends and family, doing things every day that bring you pleasure and noticing those little pieces of pleasure every day. Just the sun on your face or the way the light shines or feels on a beautiful autumn day. Don't think about pleasure as being relegated to the bedroom or to sex and sexuality, but think about it as a full body, day-to-day experience. And when you enliven that pleasure and that sensuality in yourself, then you bring that to all those you meet throughout your day, every day. So I hope you take time to really deconstruct your sexuality in the way we've been talking about this past year with what turns you on, and that you use it in a way to spark conversations with the people you love the most, with the people you want to have sex with the people you're afraid to talk about sex and sexuality with again, and that you restore your sexuality to something pleasurable and good and beautiful. So that you can bring more of that love into the world, because we're certainly in a place in the world that needs more love and more lovers and less problems and strife and difficulties. So I'll leave you with that thought today, and I hope you have a beautiful November going into the holiday season. And thank you for tuning in to this webinar of What Turns You On.